Good evening. This is the special edition, 2-hour special edition of Public Affairs, Public Access right here at the Houston Media Source. We're very grateful for this 30-year run of providing information and education for our citizens and community members. And this is a special edition because of the traumatic disasters that are affecting not only those of us in Houston and Harris County, but of course along the coastline, and also in terms of what has happened recently in Mexico City. Tremendous tragedies, Puerto Rico and some other areas. So this is very timely. We have some very special guests to start our roundtable discussion, mental health and what we can do and how people have been affected. Let me read, however, the definition that the World Health Organization defines as mental health. As a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. With that definition, it takes a whole different meaning when you start looking at a natural disaster. So without any further ado, to my left, I'm going to ask my panelists, the round table, to introduce themselves.
Yes, hi, I'm Dr. Rashida P. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I've been practicing now for over 15 years here, first here in Houston as well as in Louisiana.
Hey, I'm Dr. Matthew Stanford. I'm the CEO of the Hope and Healing Center and Institute. We're a mental health center located on the campus of St. Martin's Episcopal Church, offering services to those with serious mental illness and addiction.
I'm attorney Lori Chambers Gray, and I'm an attorney licensed and practicing right here in Houston, Harris County, Texas for the last 28 years. And our firm serves the citizens of the city of Houston and the state. And we're just happy to be here today.
Hello, my name is Leslie Smith. I'm glad to be around this great table here this evening, and I'm the CEO founder of Change Happens. 28-year-old organization that I had a dream about 35 years ago, and it was all about changing lives and empowering people to help themselves, and I'm glad to be here.
Let's jump right into it. I think one of the questions that I wanted to ask Dr. Stanford, I know when you told me, when you said you were affected, your family was affected, firsthand, what are the feelings? I mean, you know, some of us have been blessed, of course, but what are the feelings when that kind of tragedy impacts a family?
Well, yeah, my family we did flood. We had 14 inches of water in our house. We had to be taken out by a boat out of our neighborhood. Oh. And, you know, it's my two sons, my wife, and a dog got in a boat of a volunteer. And I think, you know, I think the first thing is it's really overwhelming. You don't, there isn't a preparation for that. And it doesn't matter how resilient you are, or, you know, I'm a mental health care provider. It doesn't matter that I know how to deal with anxiety. It doesn't matter that I can treat people that have those problems. It's literally overwhelming. And then you begin to have a lot of physiological responses to that, because your body, your brain perceives this as an overwhelming experience, and you have a stress response. You have a fight or flight response. So your heart pounds, you sweat, you can't sleep, you know, you don't eat. And what happens is that because a natural disaster isn't just a moment in time and it just goes away, that can continue on. And that's where you really start to see problems. So, you know, as I gave a presentation yesterday on dealing with stress after the storm, and, you know, one of the things I tried to stress to everyone is that Everyone is going to have a stress response that has been exposed to this, whether you were flooded or not. You saw it on television, you had anticipatory anxiety, you were told about the doom and gloom, your friends have been hurt, you helped people clean out their houses. Everyone's going to show some stress response, and that's normal. So you're going to have dreams, and you're going to have thoughts, and you're going to feel bad, and you're going to hear the thunder, as you mentioned earlier, and you're going to get kind of nervous. That's normal for everyone to have that. The real question is whether, as time goes by, those feelings, thoughts begin to kind of minimize, and where are you, say, a month after the storm? Because about 20% of the population is going to continue to show some kind of chronic stress-related problem, and they may need to seek some professional care.
Now, Dr. Peter, you are nodding your head very adamantly, so you might need to jump in on this. But I guess, okay, so the percentage before the storm of people impacted by mental illness was, I think, 27% overall in the American population. When you look at it in terms of this entire region and the central, the Gulf Coast region, and then of course adding in other areas like Port Arthur, Beaumont, or even Florida, what does the increase of percentages exacerbate itself? Does it really exacerbate itself into the normal population that we now, as you just said, 20% added on to? How does that work?
Right. I mean, you're going to have subsets of individuals. You're going to have one group of individuals who weren't showing any mental health problems before, but they had some predisposition. Perhaps they're overly sensitive to the environment, and they may express some problem. You're going to have people who already had mental health problems. I literally this week have been working with several families who they were displaced. They have a loved one with mental illness that they take care of, and their loved one has gone into a manic episode, a psychotic episode. They've gone in because of the stress of the situation. And then you're going to have people that are very resilient. They're going to show some initial stress, and then it's going to go away. But absolutely, there's no doubt our overtaxed mental health care system is going to be even more overtaxed because of this, because you're looking at a very large percentage of the population added on top of those that were already struggling to get services.
And to add to that, also been a mental health professional. I actually was in Baton Rouge. I'm from New Orleans and literally moved to Baton Rouge a year before Katrina hit. And so and most of my family lived with me for a while. So like you said, you don't have to be directly impacted by it, but I actually found myself being depressed. Again, being a mental health professional, I was not aware of the signs that I was even manifesting at first. Because in my head, I'm like, I'm here to, to protect everybody, help them out. And literally, I found myself playing video games all day. And I don't play video games. And that's when I was like, wait a minute, something's going on with me. And I realized that I was, feeling the loss because, again, I'm from New Orleans, and all my family, we had no idea what was going on. Did we lose everything? We had, we were not allowed back into the city. And so to know that as a mental health professional, you're not even aware of what you're going through can be very impactful. And now we're talking about Hurricane Harvey. And I have had some clients who were who survived Katrina and now had to deal with Harvey. And the trauma that they are re-experiencing, been exposed to, it has been very difficult. I have a few clients who have been in both.
So as mental health providers, both of you, obviously, directly, indirectly, how do you say to a person who has no clue about any type of diagnosis, something is happening to me?
For me, what I advise people is, if you are behaving in ways that are not normal for you, this is when you have to sit back and say, why am I behaving differently? Why am I thinking differently? Like if you hear the thunder, how's my reaction? If my child's behaving differently, if they're regressing, as we talked about before, as we sat here with the panel beginning. But it's those kind of signs. How am I acting different than what I normally do? That for me is the first step, because we can talk about all day what anxiety means. As I said, I understand what depression means, but I didn't recognize it in myself because I wasn't crying. I didn't feel like my mood was, poor or sad. I felt like I could still concentrate. But what I found myself doing was zoning out and playing video games all day, whereas my family were all going through all kind of emotional feelings, and I was taking on their emotions and feelings. So for me, it's about if you are behaving in ways that you normally do not behave.
I think, one of the things I suggest to people is, kind of assess your function. How are you functioning? obviously things are kind of not normal now, but as things get more normal, are you able to get up on time and go to work or school? Are you able to effectively manage your job? Or how are your relationships? Are you snapping at everyone? Are you, it's much like she said, are you different? But what's your level of function? If your level of function is altering, it's changed, it's lower, it's not a bad idea to ask someone outside, be that a family member or a friend, to say, how do you see me? Am I different? Am I acting different? And there's nothing wrong with getting professional help. This is, again, you have to let yourself off the hook. This is not something anyone could have been prepared for or is prepared for, just like the earthquake that you mentioned in Mexico, or Irma, or what's going on in Puerto Rico. These are absolutely overwhelming events that no set of coping skills or resiliency would be able to handle.
And it doesn't make you weak. And I definitely want to say that for some people, they feel like, I should be able to handle this. I mean, and to ask for help is a sign of weakness. I hear people say all the time, I'm not crazy, so why would I seek mental health? And it's that whole notion of any of us can be impacted by this storm. Doesn't matter if you were directly where if you lost something, or if you happen to know people who lost, or just being in the community of Houston right now. My neighborhood, we didn't have any flooding. If I didn't watch the news, I would have thought it was just bad rain. Was watching the news and people texting me left and right, that heightened my anxiety.
Reverend Smith, let me ask you, you obviously running an organization for over 30 years, you've gone through several of the storms with employees, in terms of family members. How do you, as a leader in the organization, look at people in your organization who've been affected and the kids are affected, or, because you're operating in how many counties?
11. And, I guess one of the first things that we did right after the storm, we did an assessment on, first of all, our employees, to see who was affected and how they were affected, and whether it came in through the roof or whether it came in under the door. So we did an assessment. We have about 55 employees. So we assessed everybody, found out where they were safe, and then after we finished assessing the employees, we then had our employees to start reaching out to their clients, to seeing who was affected, how they were affected. And so we did an agency-wide assessment of how did the storm affect those that was closest to us. And we started with our employees, then to our clients, and then we began to say, okay, now what can we do to assist? And so after we finally opened back up, I brought each employee in that had been affected by flood coming in, water coming to their house, and I sit and talked to them individually and just did all I could to encourage them. And I got just this one deal that I told everyone: even though Harvey was big and its destruction and devastation was massive and far reach, it wasn't bigger than God.
Yeah.
And that gave a lot of people a lot of comfort. And I text that out, it wasn't bigger than God. And a lot of them texts came back to me. And myself personally, I got stranded out of the city during that whole process. And I felt somewhat depressed and helpless, because I got this big old 4-wheel Power Stroke truck. I knew that way up off the ground I could have went and did some work, and I'm sitting stuck, in sunshine down in Florida.
Prior to the other storm.
Yeah, I left there right before the other storm, and so I got stuck out all week. The airports closed in Houston, couldn't get back into Houston, and that's a lot to deal with when you're a strong individual, and you're a strong individual, and you love helping folks, and you're sitting there in a hotel, and sun shining, and people are just going through all this devastation back home. And so what I did to not comfort myself, I said, okay, well, I'm gonna start doing conference call with my staff. Just did conference calls every day. We closed down all week and just began to doing that whole assessment that week. So people, there's a principle that says, for people perish for the lack of knowledge. And I think that you can perish mentally for the lack of mental help.
Well, do you believe that employers, those who are over other individuals, should go through that assessment process immediately, or Should they wait for the people to come in crying? Or,
Oh no, I think that you need to start that as a first step.
Right.
You should assess where the people who helping you
Right,
do
right.
what you believe the mission of the company or the organization is, because these are the people, these are your boots on the ground. If your boots on the ground don't feel as if they're taken care of and thought about, and you know, they're not going to be strong boots on the ground for you. So I think one of the first things that we should have done, and still, if we haven't done it, we should do an assessment of how it affected. And from what all the stats says, that most companies and organizations got affected anywhere from 10 to 20% of their staff was affected.
Just across the board?
Across the board.
Right.
And that's in every organization, in every company. Every company got
Was
affected
affected in some way.
In some way, with either coming under and out of our 8 employees that got affected, 4 of them got flooded.
Right.
And 3 of them got flooded, and 5 of them got. And I brought them all together, and I talked to them. I say, well, I know I shouldn't be saying that it's a blessing that it came through the roof. But if it came through the roof, it's a blessing because it's covered by regular insurance.
Right,
but if it came under the door, you got to have flood insurance.
Oh,
you know,
really?
and if you, absolutely. If it come under the door, it's not covered if you don't have flood insurance. And of the 3 that came under the door, 2 of them didn't have flood insurance. So
I need a legal perspective now. I need a legal perspective. So there's a difference.
And there is a difference in what coverages will be available to a person. And I heard a statistic that 80% of the people affected did not have flood insurance. So
Do they need to know if it came under the door or through the roof?
Well, that's one of the questions that will be asked.
By who?
By the adjuster that's going to take that claim in. And so we have been telling our clients to let's start with that contract that you signed, because a lot of people will say it's not just one answer. It is, what is the coverage that you actually purchased? What is it that is provided for in your contract? And then with flood insurance, it's not necessarily going to make you totally whole. It will fill in a gap, but there are limits even on flood insurance. And so you're not going to say, I have this policy and we've wiped out all of the potential problems, because there will more often than not still be gaps in what's going to be provided for.
But I want to find out. So when you sit there talking to them, do they know? Did they?
some of them didn't know, and so
They did not know?
Right. And when I found out, I went around and I said, came through the roof. I said, praise the Lord, you know, because that's a better coverage.
Right.
Because regular insurance covers it when it comes through the roof, through the window, wind damage and stuff like that. But if it's a flood, you got to have that flood insurance, because your regular insurance won't even cover that.
Dr. Sanford, that was
It's excluded.
Did you know that at first?
I did know that.
Oh, you
and,
did?
and I actually had flood insurance.
Amen.
But I will tell you another wrinkle to add to that. Another problem we're having here in the town is that individuals who who are in apartments or renting homes, they often have rental insurance. But rental insurance, you have to have a rider on top of it for flood. And the other thing about that is, if you're in an apartment, for instance, and your apartment was flooded and it's non-habitable, the landlord has the right to void your contract, your lease, and tell you to leave. And so we have a number of people in town that simply can't find places to live because they were in apartments, and there are no apartments now. And so no, I did fortunately know, mostly because my wife insisted that we get flood insurance. But it's a difficult process. It takes a long time. And again, this is just back to that idea of trauma. The trauma doesn't stop when the rain stopped. The trauma didn't stop when the water went down. When I go to my house today, the bottom floor is gutted. There's nothing there. You know, I can't live in that house. You know, I'm have to wait probably weeks to months before I'm going to see any money from my insurance to fix that house. You know, and so it's. You know, luckily I had that, and things were worse off for others. I understand that, but you know, my children have to wake up every day. They're sleeping on the floor, and you know, I mean, it's you know, the trauma just continues in a sense, and you're reminded every day. And that's the problem. I think that, you know, you may not have initially been overwhelmed, but just kind of the constant additive trauma could cause someone to have problems a month from now, 2 months from now. And so I think we need to just be watching our families and friends just to get a sense of how they're doing.
Counselor, who takes the blame in a sense if the policy ain't right, if you didn't read this, and now it's exacerbated because everybody's looking at you as the, you know, as the breadwinner at the house, and I want to say something. We at some point we got to go there because people want to blame God. You know, blame just everywhere.
You want to blame somebody.
Huh?
You want to blame someone.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I think, as they say, there's enough blame out there for everybody.
Okay. Okay.
But the thing is, it's buyer beware. And even if we've never flooded before at this level, we have to realize we live on a coast.
Right.
And it is highly possible, if not probable, that this could happen. And how do we prepare ourselves for this? And even the most prepared person, as you were saying just a few minutes ago, it still will have an impact on you. And even if you're not directly affected, you're still going to be vicariously affected. I thought that I had did everything to get all the food together, just buy up everything and get everybody, gather them up to a place where we knew hadn't flooded before to get ready. Right. And then I'm getting phone calls from clients who are in homes that are flooding. And so I can't sleep after that. So I'm trying to make the calls, stay on the phone with 911, make sure that this person knows that we care about them. We want to help them get out of that situation that could mean life and death. And the calls kept coming rapidly. And you would think, well, why are you calling a law firm? Well, you're calling wherever you can to try to get some answers, to find out, who do I call, who do I get, who do I blame, where can I, find an answer to get myself out of this situation. So even though we're not directly in that, we are all in it together. And that's the thing that I love about Houston, and I'll just plug that, at this opportunity, Dr. Gilmore, that our city came together. Our city came together from all walks. Right. I was just totally humbled to walk in the convention center and see all of the tables set up. You had Christian organizations, you had the Red Cross, you had food banks, you had lawyers, you had medical personnel, you had every aspect of our lives, of our community together, trying to make whatever contribution that they could. I had my nephew from Louisiana. They called him the Cajun Navy, trying to get his boat in so that they could come and help. You had people, I had calls from Philadelphia, the Northeast, all over, wanting to do something. And that's, as the takeaway from it, even in the lowest of moments, that really was comforting, because in that moment you felt like, we're not alone, we can do this and we can get through this. And I'm really happy about the conversation now, because it will be months, if not years, before we'll get back to what is normal. And I try to say that to my clients, this really is our new normal.
Yes.
I've heard that on 2 or 3 occasions.
Yes.
What do people really mean? This is the new normal. Y'all need to explain that.
Some of our doctors here.
No, I mean, I honestly said this today to one of a client that I saw who had lived through Katrina, and I'll rephrase that. 2 clients. One had lived through Katrina, and with Harvey, luckily she was okay. And we talked about that process and how we both could not sleep, because we kept thinking any moment we're going to flood. Even though I kept looking out the window, you know, like anxiety heightened because my mother also flooded in Baton Rouge. You know, had a big flood in Baton Rouge last year, and so my mom had to be evacuated out. And again, not in a flood area. Baton Rouge normally doesn't flood, so it was just that my area normally doesn't flood. But hey, acts of God, you just don't know what could possibly happen. And so as we were talking, processing it, and I kept saying, what I remember when I was living through the time after Katrina was that if I can get to December, if I can make it to December, we will start to have some sense of normalcy. It will be new in terms of everything has changed now, but at least we can start getting our lives back. And so when I had another client later who is going through, you know, having lost her home and her car and everything else, and she was crying and she was talking to me, and I said, I've been through this before. And God is telling me that you just give it time and you will get through this. Give yourself till December. And she started laughing. And she was like, why December? I said, because that's what I gave myself. It may not work for you, but that's what got me through. Every month was like, okay, December. And literally when December came, it was like everybody was kind of back to whatever routine they had to change a little bit, but overall people were getting back to some sense of normalcy. Because again, the new normal means for you it might be something different. But everyone's lives have changed because of, you know, Hurricane Harvey. And if you were from New Orleans, it changed because of Katrina. New Orleans is a different city now, as I anticipate that Houston will be as time goes on. And you won't know that until we actually go through it, what kind of city Houston will be. I think New Orleans is a better city.
Now, you know, Dr. Stanford, I know you're a great faith believer, and I think one of the things that I was hearing Leslie, God is bigger, but I mean, as a believer, how, and you hear this, I know you've heard it, our people, you know, they blame God or whatever. So here you are a believer, you know, and where do you put your thought process? Because you're constantly talking to other clients too. Right. So where do you lie? You know, where do you put that? Then not to cut your thought off. Then you turn around and you see Puerto Rico, which has been just blown up. I heard there was no power. You said you were there. There was no power in Puerto Rico, Mexico City. They was looking for these little children, people crying, everything. You know, children dead. I mean, where do you put your thought as a believer? Because a lot of people are unbelievers, but those of us who are believers, I mean, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question, and it is a question that people come up with. And we run trauma groups at the center, and that's one of the very first things we talk about. You know, people want to know, where was God when this happened to me? You know, and couldn't God stop this? You know, regardless of what it was. I think one of the things that you have to as a person of faith, you have to step back for a minute, and you have to. It's easy when you're all of a sudden overwhelmed yourself by the trauma to suddenly start asking those questions. But I don't know that there's ever been a year or a month that it's gone by in history that there wasn't earthquakes, hurricanes, tsunamis, destruction, and you know, and so it's always ongoing. I think, you know, we don't want to get overly theological, but I mean, we live in a fallen world, you know, and the reality is that it, you know, this is a consequence of a fallen world. I think what you have to do is you have to separate for your, you know, at least for us as a faith-based organization, we try to separate for our clients where God is with them in the disaster, as opposed to God being in control of causing the disaster on them. And so that God can be a healing and empowering force for them to recover from this, and that, you know, that he wants to be present with them, as opposed to, why didn't God stop this hurricane? The hurricane is a consequence of a fallen world, and just like any other negative thing that happens. And so I think trying to separate that for them. But you're very right. Clients, individuals just in general that are people of faith are going to say, you know, why did this happen? Why did, you know, I've never flooded before. What did I do? And look at this as some type of punishment upon themselves. And again, I think you have to separate a good God that's with you through the struggles from kind of a punitive God that likes to punish you, and help them understand that God is there to empower them as they recover from these traumas.
Reverend, I know you have a perspective.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I believe if you ever come to my office, you've been there, I have eagles everywhere, just all over my office. And there's a scripture that says, for they that wait upon the Lord, they shall mount up with wings as eagles. And to understand that scripture, you got to know something about an eagle. And during a storm, the eagle is the only bird that don't have to land. They fly above the storm. Now, during Harvey, would you rather go through Harvey or stay above Harvey?
I would have preferred
If we stay above Harvey
choice, yeah.
and
we
we
have
don't make
choices.
Harvey bigger than God, our mental health is available. It's right there. When you make Harvey bigger than God, that's when catastrophe happens within our mind, within our soul, and we begin to sink and we go into these different areas of depression, low self-esteem, all the stuff that goes with making something bigger than what it is. So eagles, when God wants us to stay above those trials, those challenges, and Harvey was just a challenge. Right. We've been through Katrina, we've been through all kind of stuff. But when we go through it, it beats up on us. But when we stay above it as an eagle, that's what that scripture talks about. We shall mount up with wings as eagles. And so I try to stay above the things that happen to me in life. It's very easy to sink into them. Very easy.
Why do you think a person would not use that analogy? Because they don't know, or they can't take their mind there, or Dr. Stanford, the stuff and things has been so valuable. It's a lot of stuff and things in front of people's yards.
Oh, absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely, and you can't focus on the stuff and the things. When the stuff and the things become your life,
Right.
when the stuff and things go down, you go down with it.
Right.
So when there's somebody bigger than us,
Right.
and I believe that has to be accepted first. And we are all in his will, and this is a divine plan. I mean, he didn't cause this, Harvey. He just permitted it to happen.
Right.
God don't cause this stuff. He has what you call a permissive will.
Right.
And so he permit things to happen. He could have stopped Harvey. He could have stopped Irma. And what's that boy down in Puerto Rico? Was it Hugo?
I don't even want to call
Jose? Yeah. He could stop all that. He has that power. But God permit things to happen. Why? When things happen in my life, on the other side of the storm, there's daylight. There is daybreak. Do you remember right after the storm, the sun came out?
Right.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. I remember saying it's a beautiful day.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful
After
day.
every storm,
It's
there
beautiful.
is sunlight.
And so, Counselor, let me understand this, because obviously you being a lawyer, it's just so, everything is, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock docket, whatever. That obviously creates havoc in our organized systems, I'd like to say. I mean,
It absolutely has. And for us in Harris County, the criminal courthouse flooded somehow, as we understand it. So now you have 22 district courts and all of the county courts combining with civil courts. And you have tons of people that are in our jails. They've not gotten bonds. They are there waiting on court dates. They're waiting to have their cases heard. But with the courts having to combine civil and criminal courts and share courtrooms, it has become a different day for us there. A lot of our cases are being reset to days that we don't know of what is the next date. And you're right, we're normally, those of us who are in court representing persons in courts and on dockets, you will get the next setting. Now we can't even get the next setting in some cases because we don't know when is the next setting. We'll have to find out in the future what that next date will be. So it is difficult. It's
the chaos.
It is. It's different, But what we try to do in my office is just to try to stay positive, because as you know, everybody has so correctly pointed out, we're all connected in this. And if we're just angry and chaotic and confused and not trying to talk to each other, we won't be able to work through how do we get through this. Right. So now what we're doing is we're calling people more often. We're calling and checking on them. We're letting them know, we know that this is a situation. We know that we don't know the answer, but we are still here to, for you. And that's what our community has been able to do. I know a lot of the organizations, and you all have said before today, we're calling and just talking to people to let them know that we understand that we are all affected. And even the commercials we'll see on TV, you'll have a lot of the different car dealers and what have you text us, we're with you. We're just gonna just wait for a while and then we'll, send you a bill. And it's that kind of, somebody at least is listening to me. And so we don't have the answers, Dr. Gilmore, we do not have all the answers. But
Dr. Stanford, not to cut your point off, but you said answers, and I know you've been giving workshops to help people with answers.
Yes, we at the Hope and Healing Center, we've been offering, we're starting a support group tomorrow for people that have been damaged, had trauma or loss from the storm. That's at noon, and it'll be going for the next 8 weeks, and you just show up. You don't have to do anything.
Where's this at, man?
The Hope and Healing Center. We're on the St. Martin's Episcopal Church campus. We also are offering individual services for people that are struggling with trauma or loss from the storm, and those services are all free. We are offering a number of educational programs. This week we had one on adults in stress. Next Thursday we'll have one on children in stress. And
are you recommending that churches could potentially contact your organizations and be expanded in certain areas?
Absolutely. We do a lot of church training, a lot of faith community training, and I think faith communities are a real front door to the mental health care system and have an opportunity to really offer services. We have curricula that churches could use on trauma and different types of things, and we're happy to do that training, and they just need to contact us at the Hope and Healing Center, and we'd be happy to help them with that.
Very good. What is your organization? I know you're in 11 counties. I know that's an extra. I know that you've gotten some calls. Y'all want to do the help.
Yeah, we got a lot of calls and trying to hook up with other organizations like ours. One organization by itself, standing alone by itself, cannot, I believe, be effective. You have to join with I'm a part of the nonprofits that then came together in the community. I'm a part of the faith community that then came together in the community. Tomorrow I attend the CDC community, that Community Development Corps that have come in together for Harvey. So I believe that we have to join with bigger and organized forces to actually do something, and that's what Change Happens has done. Is that I know we're a small organization, but when you join with others, unity together make you huge. And so that's one of our strategies, is joining with others and trying to be a standalone deal out here.
Have you seen there being more of a reaching out to organizations, smaller organizations?
Oh, absolutely.
And wanting to, be boots on the ground. Have y'all seen that happening more so now? Yeah,
absolutely. We will use our vans that we have to go deliver supplies to places that are in need of maybe water, in need of other type supplies. And so I just use my staff to say, okay, go get in the van and go pick up the stuff and go deliver it, And so we're doing a lot of that. And just like with Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church, I'm not a member of Wheeler, but I collaborate with organizations that's affiliated with, that Wheeler is in, and they got all of these supplies in, and they needed them delivered to different places around the city. So I'm more effective as an organization by joining with others. We
got two connections here. The, Change Happens and the Health and Healing Institute, in terms of the connection, in terms of partnerships, Dr. Baran, how long do you think this is going to be needed? Well, how long do you think should be?
Oh, I wouldn't put a time limit. Again, it depends
Oh,
on
you
the.
wouldn't?
No, I would not put a
Oh.
time limit. I just think that, as you said, there is always light after darkness, and so I think this is going to make Houston an even better city. I really do. So
You keep saying that.
I do.
What
'Cause I see
better
how-
do you? What better are you referring to?
maybe that we all get along better. As people.
But can we all? Yes, we can get along.
yes,
We can get
exactly.
Well, I'm in agreement with everybody.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and I want to say thank you. We're getting ready to have a break. We're going to a break. We've got some more guests coming, and I certainly want to say thank you very much. Again, we can make sure we make these contacts possible. We'll be trying to share with the Houston Media Source organization to get this information out as we go along. And I want to say thank you to all of you for being here on this first round. We've got more time, more guests, but we're going to continue. Thank you very much. We'll be right back. We're going to take a station break, and we're coming right back.
Why don't you walk out in it?
Walk in it?
Yeah.
I'm afraid to.
No, it's okay.
You just sorted out his shoes?
No, these are already wet. Let's go. Yeah, well, we're already wet. But you will be. Just get over it. Come on. Let's go. Let's go.
We're back, a special 2-hour edition of Public Affairs, Public Access right here at the Houston Media Source, celebrating 30 years of bringing you information and education. I'm your host, Robert McKinley Gilmore Sr. We have a new set of guests, and I want them to introduce themselves right quick, along with Attorney Gray again.
Yes, my name is Geraldine Hayes, and I'm from Help for Interventions, and I'm a social worker, licensed master social worker in the Houston area.
I'm Dr. M.O. Johnson, pastor Rose of Sharon Baptist Church for 33 years, and we have an organization, Uplift 4th Ward.
I'm happy to be back here, Dr. Gilmore. I'm Attorney Lori Chambers Gray.
And I'm Dr. Derek Wilson, Associate Professor at Prairie View A&M University and the current President of the Houston Association of Black Psychologists.
Let me start by saying that certainly again, Doctor, you know, I'm I was shocked to hear that you were affected. And how are you doing? How's your family doing? You were affected by this tremendous tragedy, a storm.
Yes.
I'm doing well, and the family is doing well as also, in the fact that you know, a lot of love and support has definitely come from the community, particularly from the Association of Black Psychologists, both local and national. So it was good to hear people who have heard about the tragedy that occurred in Houston, but also for them to reaching out to us and reaching out to myself in particular. It really has uplifted me. And more importantly, there's also really has been uplifting is the fact that, you know, I'm a professor as well. So the fact that I've been able to go in and teach and have my students, you know, revive and revitalize my spirit and my soul to say that, you know, the purpose is still here, that we're still thriving, and that, you know, there's a higher regard in terms of what we are here to do and be capable of accomplishing. So I just want to say that, you know, we're getting through it. I'm getting through it, doing pretty well at this moment. Challenges of dealing with rebuilding, you know, but that's a time concept. But as far as what's going through day to day, what's going through right now personally, I'm in pretty good spirits and pretty good health.
I didn't get a chance to ask Dr. Snap, and I'm quite sure he, like yourself, because you all are known nationally. How is that in the sense that you start getting these calls from, how far did you get calls from?
Oh, calls came from as far as California, from Florida, D.C., and really it feels gratifying. I'm grateful. I must say I'm just grateful, and that is really something that uplifts the spirit. It does make you reflect, and it does also make you recognize the connections that one has made
with people,
people
that's right.
abroad. So not just locally, but even abroad. And so I feel very grateful. And so just to be here. On your show, to talk about issues that pertains to us. Again, I'm just happy to be here and happy to be able to, you know, at least participate in the discussion and conversation.
Right. Well, I guess the same would be applicable in the sense that Reverend Johnson and you know, the idea that you got calls from all over the state of Texas,
in Atlanta and California, and today I got a call from some architect. Their organization will be in town on October the 7th and the 11th, Wednesday and a Saturday, and they are looking about 700 would be in town, but about 70 are out getting ready to work. They want to work. I said, we've mucked out the houses. We need to go back and put sheetrock in. And so I'm trying to get people together, get houses together so they can go out and find work when they get into town.
Yes, you're a developer, significant developer here in our city, Fourth Ward area. And how has that been? I mean, I've heard a lot about that part of it. Well,
it's needed now, especially low-income housing. I talked to the mayor about that earlier, and he said he would be behind us building low-income housing. So I'm in the process of doing that too, building some houses, 50,000 less, so we can get.
Say that again.
$150,000.
Oh, I was gonna call the lawyer right now.
Exactly.
50,000.
Well, we did sell one a couple of years ago for 50,000.
Just 50,000.
Yeah, 4-bed, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2 cars.
Stop.
Yes. When the economy went down, We sold it to a city worker, and
Nice.
I like that because I think Mayor Lanier, Mayor Brown, Mayor White, and Mayor Turner too, I think he's doing a great job. They want to make this a hometown instead of an apartment town. Houston complete. That's what Mayor Turner is. He want to make Houston complete, a hometown, so people can come to Houston and not just live in apartments, but live in a home. And I like that idea. Home bring equity. You're in an apartment, you just paying the rent man. But when you're in a home, you own that home and you have equity in it. So I think that's a great idea.
Jenna, I know you, as a social worker, that's one of y'all's mantras, you know, finding people a place to stay. And
Yes.
how do you think that is going to be viewed? Or is the displacement, as we were saying earlier, a more of a reality because people don't have a place to stay? Homelessness is, you know, out of control.
Exactly. You can call it a new sense of homelessness. You know, persons who are experiencing being displaced due to the Hurricane Harvey, it makes them to be in a place where they've never been before, and it's like, you know, where do I go from here? I've been talking to a lot of clients and families who telling me they're now either living in a shelter, or they're living with family members, or they're living with friends, or it's just persons have even had to leave leave the city or even the state, you know, for having a place to stay during the interim of rebuilding and recovering. So to hear that some housing options are coming up soon makes it where it can be something that can be happening, you know, different and new for the persons who are needing that home.
Let me ask you, Jerry, there was a point made about the last conversation about the new normal.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just put that on the table.
Yes.
The new normal.
So Attorney Gray, you heard it too.
Yeah.
So what do you think the new normal means?
You know, the new normal, when I heard that term, I could definitely relate to it. The new normal is how individuals and families, and even our community, is looking at ways in which to handle even new events that come about when we have a disaster event. I've been talking to colleagues and even organizations who say that we need to strengthen our policies and strengthen procedures that can handle natural disasters here in Houston. And then the new normal, just bringing it home, you know, just persons who, I know that it brings a sense of community. Persons are feeling closer to one another. They probably are not speaking, and I know I had just conversations in my community where persons was just wanting to know, are you okay? You know, and is everything okay? How are you today? And how were you affected? And so it brings that sense of community and conversation that probably that you may not experience in other times.
You're right, because I had some people say to me, they said they had some neighbors in the neighborhood. Now, and Dr. Wilson, you might be able to relate to this, say, I know they've been there 12 years. I never talked to them. And the storm made them. That's right.
It was a sense of commonality.
Yes. Well, the commonality was the storm?
Yes.
Oh, is that what it was, Wilson? I mean, I don't know. I mean, did you have some people talk to you, and were you there when you?
Well, I mean, in the community that I'm in, we're already a community.
Oh, okay.
You see, so that's what I'm trying to understand. This new normal, right? The new normal is that we're creating new communities or ways in which we communicate or relate to each other.
A new communication style.
Our new communication style. But I want us to reflect on the fact that as we're speaking around this table, we've always been communal people, right? So what is new for someone else has always been part of who we are. In other words, it's not really new for us. And I say that to have us to recognize that sometimes I recognize this in training, doing trainings and competency trainings or leadership trainings, that we allow other people to take their ways of recognizing communal or connectedness as a way of functioning to be part of leadership or to establish communities when we've always been this way in the essence of who we are. And so I just want to bring that to the table. So it's interesting to call it a new normal when it's really probably an old way of being for us. And if we're talking about us African American people, that's who we are, and that's what we're about. It's just now being recognized. And so that's just want to put that on the table and just say that's what's important about. And I'm glad that you asked the question, what is a new normal, right?
I like it. I like it.
Well, the idea would be, Rev. Johnson, I mean, you know, you're in the area which is going through major levels of gentrification.
Yes, yes.
Fourth Ward, you just said it.
We had to deal with the new normal in all of the 2,000, 20,000, 10, 11, 12, because it started in the 90s, displacement in Fourth Ward. But I think new normal means that you have to get used to doing things different. And you got to get used to national disasters, get used to, because people get settled in their ways and they kind of forget. I like what Doc said. They forget where they come from, and so they say, "Oh, I'm in a normal atmosphere here, and I'm gonna just do what other people do." But you have to think about when you're living on the coast and you're susceptible for hurricanes and other floods, national disasters, natural disasters, catastrophic in Houston. You got to think about that, and you say, well, if I'm going to build, which I'm a builder, I'm going to build houses a little above. We had to build houses 5 feet above the street level, but we can build them 10 feet above the street level because the flood. If you look back when the house was built in the 70s, my mother bought a house in North Plaza. Her house is below the street level, and it easy flood in their house because it comes off the street into the house. So,
but you know, that's an interesting observation because counselor, many people they're beginning to sue because people. I don't know whose decision that was.
Exactly, and I want to caution our viewers to think about this new normal.
Yes.
We're going to go through a huge rebuilding process when you talk about building. And we've been hit with a lot of despair. We've lost a lot of things, but we have to be careful to make sure we're dealing with people in the rebuilding process that are invested in our community, so to speak. You need to be able to find a contractor that you can trust to rebuild, because you hear all of the stories. That's what we'll hear.
Well, are you saying people getting ripped off?
Well,
Doctor,
yes.
You haven't had that kind of experience. Your neighborhood haven't had that kind of experience, have they?
I haven't had that experience, and the people around me that I know so far hasn't had that particular experience. But the point is well taken, that you have to develop a relationship with folks in order to conduct business with folks.
Because you are having a lot of people coming into our city just for that purpose. We would think, okay, they're here to help, but how do we know this? And that is the problem. You know, a part of the problem is we will get an influx of people who will put a sticker or plaque on their vehicle and say they're a contractor. And that may be the case, but that very well may not be the case. And so how do I, as a consumer, differentiate who is it that I should deal with?
I think
does this person have insurance?
If a person gets stressed out from the storm, then all of a sudden somebody comes to rip you off. I mean, that's double stress, as you think, Ms. Ed?
Oh, super stressors, and that's why as consumers, persons who've been affected should really take the time to become educated about processes and research and check out the Better Business Bureau, ask questions, give personal referrals, so that can.
Honestly, I mean, come on now. Do you think a person, half of your house is sitting in the front, right? It's good at, And you thinking about the better build, you really think about somebody who can come in there and wave a magic wand, right? A developer, like you said, you're a developer, wave a magic wand and fix my house.
Doc, did you see some of the signs that people had by all of their stuff?
Right.
We have guns too.
Oh.
And so they are trying to protect what left from those homes.
Yes.
And so we are a state that love our weapons.
That's
We
right.
love our guns.
That's
and
right.
so it definitely is a time for you, buyer beware.
Right.
Because you are in need of getting your home remodeled, putting it back together. But you want to make sure that you're dealing with someone that is a contractor, a builder that has insurance, that can oversee your project, and that you are not only victimized by a storm, but then you're victimized by the person who's there
Predators
supposedly to put you back together. And that could be a problem.
But yes, a problem. But I mean, you know, as a
Predators.
developer, isn't this a what they call a buyer's market right now? Everybody and their uncle wants somebody to come up with a sign.
But predators are out there. Build a relationship with somebody you know that can refer you or do the work themselves, because predators, this is predator season. People follow storms and floods and all kind of catastrophic things. They follow that just to make a dime and move on. So you got to be careful who you get to work on your house.
Absolutely.
You really have to be careful. You really have to, you're already traumatized, and get to know somebody. If you know a contractor or somebody, build a relationship with somebody, and they'll help you through it. I help people through, is this a good person to go by? I come and look, and I refer people to them, because people are hurt and they are in pain and they need help. They don't need to be hurt further by having somebody to come in and do a shabby job and leave, and you got mold after they leave. That can be.
Dr. Wilson, what's your feeling about that? You've gotten wiped out, so to speak. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I totally agree. In fact, going through this process before, you know, sometimes like your neighbors will come and they want to see the work that was done, you know, and that's what we should do. So if you want to call it a new normal, what we do is we invite people over.
Yeah,
Say, this is the work I had done, and folks will look at it, investigate. You know, somebody say, oh, who was the worker? Who did this work with you and for you?
Absolutely.
So I was able to take the contractor whom I've had before to a neighbor across the street to say, look here, I walked them over there and said, he needs some work, and I'm gonna sit here and listen to you have a conversation with him and see what happens from there. You know, because he had seen the work that he had done. And so we have to connect like that on levels. Take your time. Sometimes, I know we're in a rush. Some of us are in a rush to get back to a normality, per se. Because and also a new normal is living in a situation where you have no walls. See, that's a new normal.
No what?
When you live with no walls. We used to taking all the sheetrock out, right? All of a sudden you get accustomed to like, oh, well, I've been in this place now for about 8 weeks now. I'm getting used to looking at this these 2x4s. That's a new normal.
That's a new normal.
So we have to be careful, right? We just have to be careful when it comes to all that.
That becomes abnormal, doesn't it?
Right, the new normal becomes abnormal.
The new normal.
I think that's real community.
Yes.
When if you living in a community and your house was fixed up well, you go to your neighbor so they won't get ripped off. We got a lot of elderlies that need help, and they prey on the elderlies. So help somebody. That's what community is all about. That's what coming together and helping one another through. I think this storm was not, it seemed like it was a curse, but I think it's a blessing by bringing people. I said to our congregation, God preached that Sunday. We had stuff all over the media talking about racial tension all over.
Right before that.
Before that. And that storm came through, and you saw people coming down from Alabama and Georgia and Mississippi.
The Cajun army.
Helping people. Now, God turned that around.
Right.
Only a God can do that.
Right.
He turned it around. Make people, God said, hush up and help one another. Quit arguing and bickering about racial division and help one another. I saw a chain, Dr. Gilmore, with a black person up to the truck, helping a person out, pass the kids down. Chinese, Hispanic, white, black, white, passing a child all the way down the line. That's what God wants us to. That's what He wants us to be.
Right.
That's what He wants us to look like. People helping people, people caring about people, people loving people,
Right.
and all of this hate and somebody said you talked about things that's piled outside. Things can be replaced, but people are most valuable to God and people.
What you think about that, Jill? As a social worker, I mean, that's your
Yes. Yeah, in the people business.
right. The people business.
In the people business, I see people, and I was definitely encouraged by the Houston coming together and the connectedness, and it does give a person that it was given that sense of hope.
Yes.
And the trauma that we all experience, not just the trauma that persons actually experience as being a victim of the hurricane, but also the persons who were watching it, the first responders, and all the persons who was involved in helping persons through that. They had their own experiences, so the stressors, and they're far-reaching and wide, and people are still recovering in that and having that sense of new normalcy. So the connectedness has been definitely obvious with our new communication style as you described.
Let me
And,
see. We got a phone call.
Okay.
He's Mark. Who is the phone call? Somebody's on the phone.
Yes, I am.
Yes. Can we help you?
This is Joseph speaking about, and I would like to explore transportation needs in the city of Houston. I have been involved in the noticing that TxDOT wants to build an underground passageway on the east side of downtown and eliminate the Pierce elevator. As well other places like 288 at McGregor that flood. Do you think that the transportation, and also let me add that the city of Houston is trying to make this a town of bicycles inside the loop. And all these things involved, the last time we had a hurricane, there were people that were stranded and didn't have any transportation, so they pulled out the buses. You know where I'm going with this.
I see what you're saying.
Your panel knows where I'm going with this.
Okay.
Let's talk about transportation, please.
All right. Thank you. Very good observation. Couldn't nobody go nowhere, basically, regardless of what they're going to build, because all the freeways became bios, look like to me.
Yes.
I mean, you're a developer. I mean, that's a...
and Buffalo Bayou run, Allen Parkway was flooded. Channel 13 got knocked, Channel 11 got knocked out because it came all the way almost to West Dallas. But Freedman Town was built on a hill. Well, they built it on a hill.
On a hill.
Yeah, those slaves put all that rubbish in there and put that concrete over it, those bricks over it. And so we don't get flooded, thank the Lord. But
Derek, was your area that flooded over by a bayou?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we right off of a creek. So the Cypress Creek.
It turned into a lake.
And it turned into a lake. The neighborhood was a lake. So it was very interesting just to see how it transpired.
Yes.
And it's very interesting, the after effect, and just seeing what it looks like. It's amazing.
What you mean?
But more importantly, what I found that was really challenging, because you talked about transportation, talked about transportation.
Right.
And you mentioned it. We were actually stuck on one side of town.
Yeah.
Who? Your family?
Family and everybody who was in that area.
Yeah,
you literally stuck.
You couldn't go nowhere.
You couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't travel beyond. We couldn't even make it in 1960.
Wow.
Couldn't make it north. Couldn't go further north. Once you was up north, you couldn't come back in. Even if people was willing to come and help, they couldn't make it past 10 to come get to us. People who was willing. So and that's what made it really interesting. Is that you couldn't go anywhere in certain places. Yeah. So in other words, we couldn't escape if we wanted to escape.
And I think the caller brought up a good point about transportation, because you had pockets. Obviously, the entire city did not flood. You had pockets where there was flooding. Then you had pockets where there was no flooding, like Acres Homes, for example, my original neighborhood.
I'm from Acres.
But you have a need still to be able to get food in, and how are the trucks going to get in, because things like bread and water became vital for us to
Everybody.
exist.
Yeah.
And so we as a city need to begin to think about, well, obviously going with an underground type of transportation system may not be the thing to do.
No.
But what is going to be the transportation mode that we can either develop or perfect?
Of the future.
Of the future.
The new normal for transportation.
Exactly, to think about that. And how can we address that need in the midst of a disaster, of a storm? We're going to need to be able to get supplies in, get people to the hospital, or places where it's not a luxury. You have to be there to get your dialysis treatment, for example.
Oh, yeah.
And life and death situations.
You were going to say something, found point?
Fine point. We had some young ladies go to our church that
Right.
their car was flooded.
Right.
They couldn't get back and forth to work, so
Right.
we had to use our van after the flood resided to go get them and take them to work until they could get some. FEMA didn't help with that transportation, so we had to step in as a church and do some transportation.
You had to do that.
Yes, yes.
It's required to be helpful. Geraldine, it's required to be helpful, huh?
Not only a requirement, but as community stakeholders, we're on a mandate
A mandate.
mandate to meet the needs.
That's right.
And meeting the needs can, as a city as large as us, we should have, I really firmly believe that we should have transportation that could be accessible. you
Yes.
know, and
For everybody.
yeah,
That's right.
accessible.
Absolutely.
Definitely that.
We're going to take a break. We've got a new set of guests, found group. This is a 2-hour special going through. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you,
discussion.
Dr. Gilmore.
We'll be right back. All right, we're going to wrap up our 2-hour session with a dynamic panel again. We're talking about how you need to address this issue, or in some cases, how it's affected you, and then what you can do to maintain your mental and spiritual stability. That's been a factor. And with these recent storms, I think Puerto Rico was put no power. It was no power. The whole island was ravaged. And then, of course, everybody has seen and heard about the tragedy in Mexico City. I think the count is now over 200 and some odd people have been killed there. And those children, they showed the pictures, that was just tragic. And we're talking about this new normal all of a sudden. And so I have a dynamic panel again. We're going to end up, introduce yourselves again for me. I've got a couple of psychologists.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rashida P. Ryan. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist for over 15 years here in Houston, Texas.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Zina Bell. I'm a psychologist, Bell Psychology Clinic. I work with individuals, adults, children, and teens, providing psychological services and some testing.
I'm attorney Lori Chambers Gray. I'm a local attorney here, a native Houstonian, and we provide legal services to our community and have done so for the last 28 years.
I'm Dr. Max Miller, pastor of Mount Hebron and the president of the Baptist Ministers Association of Houston and vicinity.
I want to say thank you again to the Houston Media Source for letting us have this 2-hour special. It's certainly been needful. I see already there's more need here. I want to start off this last discussion focused on help. What do we do to help? I know President Miller, the association, you've gotten calls from all over the world probably, but tell us about that a little bit in terms of people wanting to give help, offer help, the help has been given, what's going to be needed over the next however long.
Right. Well, one thing for certain, it is not a short fix. I tell individuals that this is not our first rodeo. We started way back with Katrina, where they stayed with us at least 2 years at the church. We housed them there until we were able to get them back to New Orleans, or some that we still have at our church. So we're doing it again. This time, it's closer to home. We are actually an independent disaster distribution relief center, where we have had not only been able to help over 400 people as of today, we reached over 400, but we also have had phone calls and trucks come from all over Nashville, Dayton, Ohio, Milwaukee. We had 2 come from Chicago, had another one come from Dallas and San Antonio, where we even have more trucks coming. What we have done on the campus of Mount Hebron is we have turned our Life Center actually into a warehouse, because what many do not realize, after the rescue and after the recovery comes restoration. And things that are needed before may not be needed now, and things that people say, you ask, how are we affected? Say, I lost everything, I need everything. Well, we have to try to put that in perspective. You don't need a bed if you're still living at a hotel.
Right.
But when it gets to restoration, we want to make sure we have those items for them. So we have set up a database at the Life Center, 4810 Redbud. We're actually open from 10 to 3. Most of the time we get there at least 8:30. We stay till about 7, 8 at night. But we're actually open to those that have been affected. Mostly those that have registered with FEMA, those that have dealt with the Red Cross, but there are some that they're displaced even though they're living with other family members. So if they come with the zip codes, dealing with the post office for some 20 years before I retired, we're able to look at those zip codes to make sure that those areas and those streets actually flooded. So what we have done is made sure that we move. People don't look, they're not looking for clothes right now. They're now needing hammers and nails and masks and gloves to tear out things and to make sure mold don't get all in their nostrils and the dust and stuff that causes different diseases. And we try to inform those that will be working on houses, especially those that are not experts. Check and get your tetanus shot before you step on a rusty nail. So we're making sure that we are moving now to cleaning supplies. Now, we still have clothes, we still have Pampers, we still have food. If you want to come out and look at the operation that we have, it is set up for the long stand, because I also know that after all of this, some people are going to need somewhere to stay. And we're going to make ready that we house some people actually in the Family Life Center as we continue to work with their mental and spiritual stability.
Attorney, it sounds like there's a lot of legality and liability issues going to be at stake if the organization is not a approved site or doesn't, cover this. It sounds like there's a lot of liability involved.
And that is a good question. Organizations that are not typically have as its mission to provide housing, for example, will have to remember and speak with their counsel about what is it that I must be able to provide if I say that now I'm in the housing business. But the thing that came to mind most immediately, Doc, is that anybody seeking help and going and filling out federal disaster forms and getting federal money, let me caution you, you're signing these documents under penalty of perjury. And you don't want to be in a situation after the storm to now become indicted because you have put something on your disaster form, received money for that you were not entitled to. And
wait now. You telling me somebody would fraudulently say that they were affected?
We have seen, and I would hope that that would not be the case, but a lot of times people may think that no one's looking. And I want to caution you that while it may appear to be chaos, it may appear to be unorganized, there is organization in this disaster. There is organization in this madness. Right. And when you are receiving help from federal dollars, you want to be sure that those forms that you sign, you realize that you're signing them under the penalty of perjury. And what that means is the penalties of not telling the truth could land you in front of a grand jury or a court defending yourself as to why did I state that I lost all of this and receive these funds and I did not actually do so. And so now I'm facing prison.
Let me go back, Reverend. So you were saying about checking people's zip codes. That's what you meant based upon to see if they even flooded at all?
Correct.
Have you found some people
I
coming?
have to agree with her. I saw something myself as another pastor actually set up an 18-wheeler on Cullen to help those survivors of the storm. And I immediately went to him and I explained to him, you are being an enabler. You are not assisting. Well, I'm giving it to those that need. I said, no, when you open up an 18-wheeler on Cullen, some of those same people just went around the corner and sold the water that they got from you for free. So you have to have accountability. And I'm so happy she said that. When you walk into the facility, there's a person at the front desk that would ask for your FEMA number first, because I have given enough information by Facebook Live and other social media. I have done robocalls with the information, with the phone number of FEMA, with the phone number of even the Red Cross, just like they also have a rental car program because they had no rental cars. And since they had no rentals, if you had a vehicle and your provider was in that program, there was a document drawn that you had to get notarized. You had to sign it as a voucher that you can rent your vehicle to a person that actually needed it and get $50 per day with a max $1,500 a month. And some were saying they needed it just to do a scam. So are there some scams? Yes, because I go to different sites and sometimes I meet them at the next place and say, now go ask them what they need here that they didn't just get at our site. So there is a form that you must sign that we will be handing over. There are documents with what we gave you that we will be handing over to make sure that those people, but yes, by far, there are scams going on that people are saying, what are you giving? Well, we're not giving. This is for those who were affected. Well, when I know the area, and I've been down the streets, you had floods in the street, but it never touched your home. But you say, I got a little water in my house, and they would, once you catch them, they'll say, well, when I was going back and forth helping other people, that's what I was talking. No, that's
different.
That's not what you were talking about. So you have to know that, and you also have to know the term, because there are many that think that FEMA has been truly unfair, and they believe that because they don't understand what actually happened. If something happened to your roof, that did not happen from the flood. That happened from the wind. It may have happened from the storm, but not the flood. Not from top down, but from the bottom up. So if you were denied, sometimes you're denied on what you don't know to answer. But that is not where we're coming up with those that are really fabricating the story. They are fabricating the story because they see something.
You saying they lied. That's what
Okay,
you said.
well,
That's what you said. And that's what you said. You said, you said you go to the penitentiary, right?
For lying.
It could happen.
You can go to jail.
That's the
Absolutely,
definition
you
of
can
perjury,
That's
right?
the
definition of perjury.
And they done brought up the concept of enabling, so that brings y'all in now. Because do you think that that's a reality for some people, even in the midst of all this tragedy, that people would see it as opportunity?
Yes, definitely. There are definitely people out there who are trying to find ways to benefit from other people's losses and just for what's going on. Of
Other
course,
people's pain?
yes, although they may not see it that way, they see it as opportunity, as you say. Some people don't think about how it affects other people. They're focused on how does it help myself. I mean, I'm from New Orleans, and when Katrina happened, there were a lot of people who did take advantage. Even the people who did lose things, in some cases, took advantage even more so. And people might say, well, I lost everything, so that means I deserve whatever is in the universe for me to get. And then there are people who lost everything and said, I'm just gonna try to figure this out myself. You know what I'm saying? So it's like this balance of what is expected from the community and what is it I have to do for myself. And you have a lot of people who had issues before this. So that didn't change just because a storm hit. There are people who were, you know, what we call that entitled, for lack of a better word. That didn't change because of the storm. In a lot of cases, it made it worse for those who feel like I deserve this because for whatever reason I do. And so we do have to be mindful of those individuals who are out there and take it away from those who don't. Because in Katrina, I knew people, or following Katrina, who really needed and couldn't get any because the money was gone, resources were gone, because there are people who didn't need anything who took it first. And I think a lot of mistakes were learned from Katrina and how Harvey is handled. I can see as a difference. It's a big difference from living both storms.
Dr. Bell, you shaking your head. You say,
Even the shelter is different. Like when I went to the GRB, with Katrina, you didn't have, there wasn't any security. With GRB, they were patting everybody down when they walked through. So there were definitely lessons.
So Houston has learned, that FEMA has learned. Is that what we're saying?
They've learned, and not saying that they're not making mistakes.
Right.
But this was one of those disasters, you know, people, 50 inches of rain, they'd never experienced it before. It was unexpected.
Right.
So there's always lessons to learn, and I think we've grown from it. But there's more that can be done. I think that sometimes it's difficult to identify where the needs actually are. That, you know, people are having a hard time saying, okay, there's a pocket over here, there's a pocket over there. And that centralizing the distribution of the supplies or the services, having some type of command center or central way to know that this is where this actually needs to go. So I'm getting the impression we're taking care of neighborhoods or pockets that we know about, but it may not be that overall command center approach. We know 28 needs something. We know 04 needs something. What's your experience been?
You are very much so correct. I don't think everyone that need the assistance
Right.
are really receiving the assistance.
Right.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And it's been so generalized that I even saw something when they were letting people down on the freeway that they got off of Bracewood. You can't tell me nobody else got in trouble after Bracewood on around 610. But you didn't see anyone over there. So they were kind of forgotten, and the folk that were rescued were taken care of.
Right.
Well, by then, if I could not get out of my home, but the water didn't come up that high, that does not mean that I'm not in need.
Right.
I could have still lost. You can't tell me no house in Sunnyside, no house in South Park, lost everything. But what happened, we generalized the location, and we even made lily pods. And the lily pods were one at 3rd Ward Multipurpose Center, one at Sunnyside Multipurpose Center, but it wasn't published enough for people to even know that they were there. And then the type of transportation, we had to actually use our buses from the church to go pick up people, because you had to stay there after you registered to a certain amount of people got there before you were transported. And if the certain amount of people wasn't there, and all you have is chips and water, you're gonna leave. So we had to make sure we get them to GRB or to NRG, either one, and to get them there, but it was not distributed to all of the neighborhoods that were in need. It was only the ones that were seen. And I'm experiencing that now, and really, seriously, that's why I put a halt on everything we were doing at the church to turn this Life Center, who actually house 2 high schools right now, for athletics. I had to help find them somewhere else to play, because this is a greater need right now.
Right. Right.
So you have people that have come from all over to come to that center to get something in need. Those that are waiting, those that didn't know how to qualify, those that didn't have a computer. They don't have transportation, they don't have computers. And when they finally find out what they need, they're already a week and a half to 2 weeks behind. Okay, so yes, we have run into that. In fact, we're going to get someone today to put them in the last apartment that the church has until October the 1st, because they don't have anywhere else to go.
Right.
So I totally agree that it needs to be something centralized and not just zip codes, because there are certain pockets that have not been taken care of.
I think that's what we're talking about in terms of mental and spiritual stability, because obviously, you know, what you're saying resonates in terms of a difference in treatment, but you know, some people still being missed, 03, 02, whatever, being missed, and the need is there.
The need is there. So what I've seen happen is that the in-buffs, the churches, the shrines, the shapes, the community centers have been reaching out to people that they know, saying, these are the people that are coming through that need assistance. And I think Black Lives Matter has been out there doing community outreach, creating a database so that we can all share that information and say, okay, these are the supplies, this is the mental health, this is the navigating that system. Like you said, some people just can't do FEMA applications on their mobile phones, don't know that there's an app for it. And it can get really detailed. You know, we were standing there having to do math. Let's pull out the computer, I mean the calculator.
I would have wiped out then.
Well, I saw something that I thought I had most of the bases covered. And a lady came and she says, I could not get disaster unemployment. I said, well, why not? She said, Pastor, I did everything they asked me, but I get paid cash. And because I get paid cash, I did not have a check stub to show, and they did not want to take my employer's word of mouth. So now I don't have the job back yet, because she's not back in the house yet.
Right.
But I can't even qualify to get paid when I would be at work, but I can't get to work.
Right.
So what do we do?
What do we do?
And then some companies that you have light bills with,
Right.
utilities, they're putting it on, giving you an extra month. But this particular company is not giving anything.
Oh, wow.
So she can't get anything to get it paid, but yet she cannot even get reimbursed to say, I can pay you back because I don't have a job right now. But I can't even file for disaster unemployment. That was a new one on me because it was a cash job.
And counsel, that goes back again to this legal reality of these tragedies. I mean, if the president couldn't figure that out and try to, be helpful, but that's the people, those are the people in our community who are most
Vulnerable. They're vulnerable, and there are other organizations, and I think in this storm in particular, we saw business leaders coming together, feeding people that we had not seen before, and then searching out other foundations. We know about all of the different foundations that will also provide assistance to them. So I'm thinking about the person who may not have been eligible for disaster relief from FEMA, maybe a private foundation.
I would love to get
because
some of those.
there are, and we know
you're
about
talking about like the J.J. Watt Foundation?
Exactly.
He's trying to figure out what to do with the money, and
millions
a lot
of dollars.
people raising money now. A lot of people raising money. A lot of people raising money, supposedly for helping people, and nobody knows.
Where
Where's
to
the
go?
money going?
Have you gotten a call, President?
I haven't gotten any call.
Oh, you haven't gotten a call?
No, sir.
And somebody told me they sent to J.J. Watt's Foundation, and it was like, well, we'll get back to you because they don't know what to do or how to distribute the money.
What you mean they don't know? They need to call Reverend Miller. They need to find out in the community.
They have local
I
churches,
welcome
community
any of them to
centers
come
that,
by.
you donate
The
and give.
mayor finally came by a couple of days ago. He was impressed with the operation. I told him it's open door. Anybody want to come by and look at what we're doing because we have accountability, and the needs of the people is what we're trying to meet. We're not being ugly when we say, okay, we don't need any more clothes. 'Cause let's be honest. A lot of people do their spring cleaning and say, this is something I was going to give away, and then they bring it to you and have all these things.
That are not
And
clean.
then
Well,
they're not clean.
let me go there then, because I mean we got a few minutes left. It's been a 2-hour special, but so in order to maintain mental and spiritual stability, and I want to start with you, Miller, because is it a situation where we need to find out what people need?
I would say first we need to find out what their needs are.
Right.
And at the same time, since we're talking about the mental and the spiritual stability, we need to strike up a conversation to kind of see where they are.
Right.
Because a lot of people, and you know that, I think everyone on the panel recognized that some people have been affected so mentally. I talked to a young lady, I drove to Wharton to give them some supplies. And the young lady, well, she's in her 70s. She says every time it rains, she's messed up and can't sleep. That's mental.
Yeah, that's mental.
That's emotional.
That's right.
And giving her some canned goods not gonna fix that. It's not gonna repair that.
No.
So we need to see the needs of the people that were really affected. Right. I can't tell you what you need if I haven't been affected. Well, they ought to want some clothes. No, we're past the clothes stage.
Yeah, I've seen so many
Now,
clothes.
T-shirts, underwear, things of that nature, you're gonna need.
Right.
Toiletries, you're gonna need over and over again. Pods for washing clothes, and then let's be mindful. You can't give nobody 3 pods and get mad because they show up next week. That's only 3 washings, and the average family do 3 washings in one setting.
That's true.
And then we act like it belonged to us. Well, I'm not gonna find out the needs of the people. Get out in the community and drive by and see what's still out there. Find out what we need. Once you find out the needs, let's take care of the needs, not what we want to give them, but what they need. I have not reached out to furniture companies yet. Because they're not back in their homes yet. Where are they gonna put the furniture? And I'm frightened that many of the companies are offering it right now because they know they're not back in the homes yet. What? So if I'm displaced, I'm staying with her. What a bedroom suite gonna do for me? I don't have money to pay.
That's right.
We can't fit it in her home. I can't go get a storage. I'm not even working again yet.
Well, let me go back. I want to go to this. I want to go to the woman he done brought up. She hears thunder. She get nerved up. That what is going to be needed? We don't have enough therapists now.
So you're saying
What do we need to do to help her? I mean, I'm hearing people say, you know, it's raining and I'm getting nerved up. You know.
Well, I'm over here stuttering because the mental health in Texas is not exactly number one.
Amen.
So you know we're like 49 on the list.
I heard that people was mental before the storm.
Exactly.
And it has exacerbated the need with the storm. So that the opportunities that come up, I got 2 rooms of diapers. I don't even have a baby at the house.
So I know what you're saying, and part of what we've been able to do are the educational piece, the groups that you get people together and you talk about after the storm. Right. And one of the things that's been helpful is the education piece, and you have therapists that are circling with their name tags on, so that people get a sense of the therapist is a person too, or maybe the therapist has been affected by the storm.
Both of my psychiatrists, both of them was blown up. That was on the panel. They was messed up.
Oh, okay, right. They had experienced it, but they had experienced losses themselves, right? But look, we were joking about Third Ward. Maybe Third Ward was spared for
I'm not moving.
And
I'm not moving. I'm not moving. I'm staying in Third Ward. That's all I'm saying.
So there are ways to reach people, but it's usually on that group, from a group standpoint. Right. And what has been the challenge is where will we hold these events at? And once again, back to the logistics. Do we have to transport people there? Okay, we'll go to the apartment complex. Does the apartment complex have a clubhouse we can use? Right. Okay, if the clubhouse isn't damaged, then how do we get the word out that we're there? So it's manpower, okay? So let's say that we're in Scenic Woods, because that was an underserved area.
Sure. Right.
So you're going door to door in Scenic Woods and you're trying to figure out if there's some place you can hold this event. And so what I'm saying is that it gets to be a logistics, and we know that we can do groups, we know we can deliver the services, and we have to partner with people to be able to pull it off.
So long term, long term, should the psychologists be working with church groups on a more independent basis, and should the foundations be funding that effort over a long-term basis?
Oh, definitely. I think mental health is the most important. I actually think because mental health affects physical health as well. So if we're not mentally strong, it actually weakens us physically. And I think people downplay how important mental health is. And as you were speaking, yes, if we could partner with churches. Sure. And do educational groups about what is anxiety. It really is the fear of the worst thing happening. And I think if people start to understand what it means when your body feels a certain way, that you're fearing the worst thing happening. And so then you start saying, what is the worst thing that's happening? And if you hear the rain, of course, the worst thing happening is it's going to flood again. Yeah. And so then it's about how do we allay those fears? Because first you got to even identify why you're feeling that way. And then usually what happens when I work with people, once they realize why they're feeling that way, it becomes easier to treat, easier to cope, easier to deal with it. My concern is the children. Again, the children of Katrina are now growing up. And at one point when the storm had just happened, I was in Baton Rouge at the time, it rained really bad. And the kids just froze on the playground. And the teacher started realizing the kids that froze were those are from New Orleans. And that just the idea of the storm scared them. So imagine if you are experiencing Katrina as a child, and now those who are in Harvey as a child, how that impacts their mind. You're talking about a 70-year-old who probably had some years of not having to deal with a storm, but if you are a young person and you are dealing with it, and it rains like it's raining today, it rains. This is Houston. It rains a lot. So it is about how do we educate people to even understand that, you know, this is what it means, and then how can we cope, how can we deal, how can we have faith, how can we have belief that, that we can get through this. And that is like going back to what you're saying, but
I had no therapy after Hurricane Carla in 1961. I'm telling everybody right now, you get affected by these storms, they affect you for the rest of your life. Counselor, so does that mean we might have incidents of people losing it?
I think that where we are today is we recognize that there's a need to talk about it,
Right.
and that's what's different. I think Katrina set the entire country in the different way of thinking. What would I have done if I lost everything? My favorite bakery, my barbershop, my
Everything
school, my church, it's all gone.
You're right.
Gone.
And we never contemplated that really in this country.
No.
And it's so massive sometimes it's too much to even think about. Well, I didn't even think about that. Well, what about this? And so it's just important to talk about it and then reach out to each other and realize that we need help. And sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's spiritual, but sometimes it's mental. And if we don't get it, then what happens? And I think you all can see.
Well, as a lawyer, I mean, people like to be orderly. You know, they like to, you know, this time, that time. But I guess the storms changes the order, so to speak.
It absolutely does. People want to have a question asked and answered. They want to know, will my insurance policy provide for my contents, for example? What will flood insurance provide? They want to know the answer, and it's not always a one-size-fits-all. An insurance policy is a contract between you and that carrier. You may be with State Farm or somewhere else, Farmers Insurance Company, and your policy may not provide for certain things. Your flood insurance policy, we know that it won't completely, in most cases, just rebuild your house. However, there are provisions there. And how do you go about getting through it? You do it the same way you do everything else. You read it, and then you reach out to the professionals that you need.
Right.
To help you go through this so that when you're walking through it, you won't make yet another mistake. And there are free legal services that are out there. There are many of the firms that will answer questions and meet with you, such as ours, just for the call. Just so ask the question.
Ask 'em.
And don't be afraid to reach out to your neighbor and find out what they're doing, and maybe what they're doing could help you. And then as a neighbor, don't be afraid to share and go to places like your facility and try to volunteer.
Sure.
Dr. Biron, last minute thought from you?
My last minute thought is that it's very important that we actually recognize again what it means to have anxiety, and recognize that trauma affects everybody, every racial, ethnic, socioeconomic group that we have. It doesn't just impact one part. And if we can really address that we all can experience it, I think that's a first step.
Dr. Bell, your last minute thoughts?
As we were talking, beginning to talk about Katrina and Rita, and then talking about Harvey, I realized that in the last 12, 15 years, that we've had to experience water trauma as a community. And that we're going to have, this is not going to be the last time. We're going to have to become more systematic about how we handle these disasters from a mental and emotional standpoint.
President Miller, your last closing remarks from you relative to encouragement or inviting people to see the facility or other churches being involved.
I would invite any and everyone that would like to come by, see the operation. I would like to extend a welcome to you all. If you want to do any workshops on that southeast side, that I would make our facilities available for you. We don't have to worry about no cost. I will make it available. We can partner. I'll leave you with my card. And I know you already. So whatever we need to do, we can partner to do whatever. But I always tell people this, and I've been telling this ever since the storm: don't lose your mind over the job you lost, because you're gonna need that same mind for the next one that God provides. So there is hope. Don't give up. It's hard right now. It's rough right now. But because we know He'll never leave us or forsake us. Let's just hold on. Be strong. Continue to allow your neighbor to help you as you help someone else. And I know that God will get the glory.
My co-host tonight, Counselor, what would you like to make sure these individuals who are observing this program understand?
I want the people to understand that we are strong. We are a community of leaders. We are a community that can withstand Harvey and then some. We have done that. And this will not break us. It will make us stronger. And it just may not seem that way right now, but we're here today and we'll be here tomorrow for each other. And don't be afraid. That would be my closing thoughts, because we are strong and we will get through this and the aftermath.
I want to thank again my panel, outstanding. All the 2 hours have been outstanding. I want to thank the Houston Media Source for letting us have this 2-hour discussion. Hopefully it's been helpful to you. I guess we can close by saying there is help and you shouldn't give up. Irrespective, I heard the other ministers say, God is bigger than any storm. We've seen the recent tragedies in Puerto Rico. We've seen the tragedies in Mexico City. We see the fires on the West Coast. And as Dr. Bell had said, we've seen them every year. So I think one of the things I take away from this is the harmony, the unity, whether you understand the church or not, whether you're a member or not, churches are still open. President Miller is offering that, and certainly all of the members in the association, and you've seen them all over town. So don't feel like you're by yourself. Don't feel like you're fighting this storm and you don't know what to do. I would encourage you to don't do nothing illegal. You know, don't be trying to say something happened to you and then nothing happened to you. It's enough things that done happen to people that they need to be dealing with it. So make sure you don't be stuck on that side. If you need some help, just get some help. People are there to help you. And again, I've been your host, Robert McKinley Gilmore Sr., my co-host, glad to have her back. Certainly, she's been a tremendous asset to this program over these few months, and I again want to thank the Houston Media Source for offering us the opportunity. Thank all my guests, and certainly I hope that you and the audience have gotten something. And again, support the Houston Media Source, 30 years in, providing information and education for Houston's community. Thank you very much. It's a blessing. We'll see you next time. This has been Public Affairs and Public Access.